two countries in the Pacific linked by routes of trade and discovery are Australia and Indonesia. The war cut off their ocean contacts, but after the war, one of the first ships to make the journey was the Esperance Bay. You may remember the newsreel back in 1945.
1,400 Indonesians leave Australia by the Esperance Bay for Java, with a government undertaking that they will not be landed at any port in Dutch hands. An official of the Australian government goes with them to see that the guarantee is carried out. Friends and sweethearts crowd the wharf to say goodbye. Before the ship sails, E.V. Elliott, representing the combined Australian trade unions, speaks to the men.
As Federal Secretary of the Seamen's Union, on behalf of the trade union movement of Australia, I present to you this flag. Take it with you to your young republic as a symbol of the support of the Australian workers in your fight for independence. Friends, in the name of the Indonesian Republic, I thank you for this flag. We will never forget the great help Australian labour has given us in the vital first days of our republic when we need that help most. And may Australia and Indonesia be united forever. Indonesia Merdeka! Indonesia Merdeka!
On that October day, the Esperance Bay sailed from Australia for Indonesia. But the real story behind this journey is the story of ships that didn't sail. Let's start at the beginning. Here in Australia, we know the Indonesians well. For years, they've lived in our country as friends and fellow townsmen. The women learnt the names of our vegetables. And mothers found that children were much the same in any language. There were the Indonesian soldiers and seamen. Our boys knew them as good fighters against the common enemy, Japan. At our Victory Loan rallies in Martin Place, we applauded their musicians, lending their support in thousands of pounds, as well as music. We liked their old Indonesian folk song, even if we didn't understand the words. But they did. Yet here in Australia, it wasn't just the river and rice fields, the villages of their homeland they thought about, but something they didn't have before the war, something they fought for with the Allies: independence. The voice of Indonesia calling.
Kami mengulangi lagi, Republik Indonesia telah berdiri dan kedaulatan ada di tangan rakyat. The Republic of Indonesia has been proclaimed. These are the salient points in the Republic Democratic Constitution: freedom of organization, freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, and freedom of the press. Maka di sini kita semua bangsa Indonesia mengaku dengan
Here, in the streets of Sydney, Indonesians repeated an oath which was being taken by their countrymen all over the world, an oath of loyalty to the new republic.
Mengaku dengan kebenaran membela Republik Indonesia untuk mencari kemerdekaan kita bangsa Indonesia sampai selama-lamanya, tidak mundur biarpun di dalam gelombang atau tindisan.
We shall not waver under Dutch oppression. We are ready to sacrifice our lives for freedom. With a pure heart, we pledge our word.
Dalam nama Allah, saya mengaku dengan kebenaran.
That night, they celebrated independence with the dance of the knight and the princess. For even in exile, they'd not forgotten their ancient culture. This dance, they told us, was over 1,500 years old, before Portuguese and Dutchmen came to Java. The wives and young citizens of the new republic were there too. Everyone joined in these dances. Yes, that night we celebrated. But in the morning, 72 million people took an oath to defend freedom with their lives. That wasn't just words. Look, those 72 million Indonesians live in some of the richest islands of the world. But for 3.5 centuries, Dutch colonial rulers have taken all the profits. Tin mines, the quinine monopoly, oil fields and rubber plantations. It added up to about 32 million pounds, or $100 million a year. That's quite a bit, eh? Now the war's over, they'll want to go back to making profits, and for that, they'll need ships. The ships are here in Australian harbours, in Brisbane, Melbourne and Sydney. Ships to reconquer their treasure islands, to get back their oil and rubber, their quinine and tin mines. Ships to break the back of the young republic. Ships to carry soldiers. Ships to carry guns. No, said the Indonesian seamen. We won't man your ships. We won't carry arms to be used against our own people. Here's our answer. Direct action. They left the ships. They walked off the wharves. They quit the offices. Soldiers refused service. It takes courage to strike against your rulers in a strange country, but they did that. And the Japs didn't tell them what to do. 350 years of Dutchmen taught them. They got together with Australian wharfies right here on the docks while the big ships waited. They spoke in a language workers in every country understand, of bad conditions, low wages, and what those 350 years of Dutch colonial rule had meant to Indonesia. The news spread, and waterside workers came from other wharves to listen. Finally, it turned into an impromptu meeting. That's when Australians had their say. Indonesian seamen weren't allowed to form a union till they came to Australia. We helped them get organised, and now we can't let them down. We can't scab on fellow workers. What about the Atlantic Charter? We're committed through the World Trade Union Congress to support freedom for all nations. Why not Indonesia? Their spokesman asked for just that. Our support for Indonesia's struggle for freedom and self-determination. Well, it's up to us. Declare Dutch ships for Indonesia blank. When the wharfies sat down, it meant action. Something happened on the waterfront which made all the difference in the life of a young republic. The Dutch companies, who had once had a great fleet to carry wealth from Indonesia, now had to beg for every ship to take them back. Suddenly, we heard that these were mercy ships loaded with food and medical supplies. Dutch authorities said they knew nothing of Tommy guns and ammunition alleged to be found by waterside workers. But they could hardly deny the statements of Mr. Chifley, Australia's Prime Minister.
over. Go back home.
Australian support of free Indonesia.
You fought for your freedom. Let the Indonesians have theirs.
Arms and now soldiers. 1,600 armed Dutch soldiers bound for Java, lining the decks of the Stirling Castle. Australian diggers went out to meet them, and one Dutchman who spoke for the workers of Holland, supporting Indonesian freedom.
Indonesia.
Don't fight for Dutch imperialism.
Australian support of free Indonesia. Australian support of free Indonesia. The world over.
The Dutch didn't want to hear the truth. Indonesia Calling. Through a static of gunfire, they heard the voice of their homeland, asking them to keep up the fight, to hold up all Dutch ships carrying arms to be used against the new republic.
Indonesia. Bekerjalah bersama-sama dengan pergerakan kaum buruh di Australia.
Now the fight was really on. Wharfies chalked up their answer and walked off ship after ship. In Brisbane, Melbourne, Adelaide, Sydney, in all the ports of Australia. They said to the Dutch, loading ships is our livelihood. We'll load ships for Indonesia anytime if we get a guarantee that the cargo isn't arms or supplies that could be used against the Indonesian people. We never got that guarantee. The black band spread as other unions joined the struggle. One day it was the transport workers who turned off their ignition keys and left Dutch freight stranded. Next, ships' painters stopped work. Dutch ships were too black for them to put another coat of colour on. Engineers and repair workers turned their torches in. Shipping clerks turned a deaf ear to Dutch orders. Australian seamen had been in it right from the start. Soon, they were joined by 11 British from the crew of the Moreton Bay, who jumped ship rather than carry soldiers to Java. Cables of support arrived from Harry Bridges, president of the American Longshoremen's Union, and from Chinese, Indian, Malayan, New Zealand, and Canadian seamen and dock workers. Workers in every country supported the action of Australian labour. Don't be fooled by the card game. Don't let them try to put anything over. We're a wake-up. So were the shipwrights, plumbers, coal lumpers, the Merchant Service Guild, firemen and deckhands unions, the storemen, packers, moulders, dockers, boilermakers, not to mention ironworkers and electricians. All along the waterfront, the ships were idle. The people had acted, and now came the voices of leaders supporting the principles of the Atlantic Charter. Pandit Nehru and Jinnah of India, Manuelsky and Wyszynski of the Soviet Union, and President Romulo of the Philippines protested against the use of armed force to suppress the Indonesian people. At a record meeting in the Domain, this returned soldier reported that Indonesians had already proved they could govern their own country. In the name of my republic, I thank you, said Jan Wilander. But for your help in holding up those ships, our republic might have been destroyed. The black ban on ships for Indonesia is complete. In the office of the Indonesian Seamen's Union, Max Sekantu and Tukliwan kept check on the ships that didn't sail. Vishbeek, black. Vanderlyn, black. Pahud, black. Tosari, black. Tasman, black. Janssen and Bontekoe, black. Van Swol, black. Van Hertz, black. Swartzen, one's got away, an Indian crew on board. All right, so he was mad, thinking we could stop a ship. But you don't know what that one ship meant to us. It broke the ban. The Dutch had sneaked it through by putting an Indian crew on board. Our boys didn't have much of a cruiser to go out and do battle. They didn't have any guns or ammunition, but they had words, and they were talking to Indian seamen, Indian brothers.
Indonesia's fight for freedom is your fight. Join us, valiant neighbor. Stop the engine. Turn the ship back. Stop working. Stop the engine. Why? Tu punya jahat, mem, kau. Tumara baiko. Indonesia pun tukse. Marahai, kam churro, engine room kam churro, jahat tum ke milega. Seamen, don't take arms to Indonesia. Stop working. Turn the ship back.
Louder, they can't hear you. Brothers, turn the ship back. Indonesia's fight is your fight. Go on, call again, it's not too late. Brothers! They've gone. But outside the heads, to the throb of the engines, the Indians were thinking, brothers, Indonesia's fight is your fight. Stop engines. Stop engines. They've come back. The Indians have come back. They've done it. They've stopped the ship. Come on, this really calls for a celebration. They held their meeting of celebration on the nearest street corner.
Friends, on behalf of the Indonesian Independence Committee, I thank our Indian brothers for their heroic action in support of our struggle. Indian seamen woke off Dutch ships which were carrying arms to smash the new republic. Indian brothers, we will never forget what you have done for us. Thank you.
Friends, we were informed that we were to create Allied troops and to take food to Borneo. But we found ourselves put on a Dutch ship carrying arms and ammunition to Indonesia, but we refused to sell them. The Dutch threatened us with a gun, but still we refused. And now we will not sail with the ship. Their struggle is our struggle. Their victory is our victory.
There was no need to introduce the General Secretary of the Waterside Workers Federation, Jim Healy.
During this war, the principles of the Atlantic Charter were declared by Britain and America and approved of by Russia. These principles must be applied in the Pacific and to the Indonesian people. These people fought with us during the war against fascism in the Pacific, and we people of the Pacific, the Chinese, the Americans, the Russians, the Australians, the New Zealanders, the Indians, together with the Indonesians, will do everything within our power to destroy the efforts of Dutch imperialism.
Chinese seamen had taken the hat around again, which brought their contribution to the Indonesian fund up to £1,100.
Friends, our national father, Dr. Sun said, that China must support all the oppressed nations to gain their independence. That is why we Chinese are supporting the Indonesian national movement. Long live the independence movement! Long live the Indonesian Republic!
It grew out of the cheering. Indonesia and her allies moving forward. The people of 5 nations who had stuck together. They marched toward other battles. And below them, under the bridge, lay the ships that didn't sail. Ships that didn't sail so that a young republic might live.
Bangunlah badannya untuk Indonesia Raya. Indonesia mulia, mulia, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia